Welcome to, I guess, the Star City Studio Chats for now. I'm Jay. Obviously, this is Tim. Tim and I are good friends. Tim is the... Tim will you can kind of introduce yourself, but I'll just kind of throw some of the titles that I know you by, other than friend and brother. Obviously, studio manager, Star City. Music engineer, obviously. Artist, producer. Somewhat of a social media guru as well. And I know that you'll kind of get involved in a lot of other things, bro. Like, you're just kind of actively involved, like a real... Generally, since I've known you, you're a real sort of community-based guy as well. Like, and I'll just throw an example out there. Like, you were doing the fireworks for like years and years and years, and you'll just go and get involved at, Carshalton Park and do your thing there. So, you know what I mean? You're a real hands-on, in my opinion, steady, stable, committed person to music, and obviously the manager of this place. So, you know what I mean. But that being said, you're a lot more than that, and you're a really great human being. You know what I'm saying? And you're a really deep person. But yeah, I mean, just talk to me a little bit about some of your career, I suppose, some of the things that you're involved with, and some of the things that you enjoy doing, and kind of maybe a little bit about how you got involved in those things.
What an intro.
Maybe I said too much, I don't know.
No, good. It's good. That was, it enlightened me to things I forgot about, to be entirely honest with you. Yeah, I'm Tim. I am a producer, artist, mix engineer, studio manager, wearer of many hats.
Yeah.
I like to just be busy, to be honest with you. I have a busy mind, and I've found that across my life, the less busy I am, the more chaotic my mind becomes.
Would you say that you, just to interject quickly, would you say that you've got like a self-diagnosed ADHD thing going on or not?
I'm going through that process right now.
Okay.
I've had a lot of extra letters added to my name over the course of my life, and I spoke to a few people recently. They're like, oh, yeah. Like, I'm surprised you haven't had a diagnosis before now. And I was like, one part of that is that actually, as I've got older, the kind of busyness, whether it's ADHD, whether it's not, whatever it is, but the busy, chaotic kind of nature of my mind has started to wreak more havoc as I've got older. Adult life requires a lot more structure and a lot more sensibility, I guess, having a bit of focus, even just down to things like doing your tax return every year and not forgetting to do it before the end of the time. Making sure that you save 20%. Yeah, innit? Oh, we're way past that, bro. We're way past that. Sorry to tell you.
I've got to call my accountant immediately after this.
And that is basically the point of it, is like, oh my days, I usually realize things too late, and it's the boring admin parts of life that and people would be like, oh, that's just because you're not like structured enough, or you don't have enough focus on the kind of the boring things. You just always want to do what's fun. And it's like, no, that's just where my brain's always focused on creative things, always focused on what I can build next, what I can make next, how I can help people, what I can do. And
you're very much a creative man.
Yeah, in all aspects as well. And people find it hilarious. I mean, like, a few years ago I started rug making, and people were like, what are you doing?
I didn't actually know that, so.
I mean, this is the thing, and I
can
just...
I still get a rug from you?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah. No sweat. I'll get you one soon.
We'll catch up.
And that was just the thing. I saw it online. I saw loads of people doing it. I knew this girl that did it online. And actually, that was just one of those things. I started messaging her. I was like, how do I get involved in this? What do I do? What do I need? Like, what's the thing? I just see something that I find really interesting, and I'll just give it a go. And sometimes people are like, you've gone full hog for somebody who is just trying to give it a go. Like, and I'm like, well, yeah, but then also I'm going to hate it. If I've learned that from music. If you have a rubbish guitar, you're not going to want to play it as much as if you have a nice guitar, because it's harder to play. Yeah. So if I have some rubbish piece of equipment, it's probably not going to be as easy to use, and therefore I'm going to end up sacking it off earlier because I'm just like, yeah, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
With that said, though, I do try a lot of things, do a lot of things, and give them up because I'm just like, cool, tried that, it was fun. I don't really care for it anymore.
Do you know what? As you're saying this, it's like I'm thinking about you as an artist, and I'm thinking about how actually a lot of the pieces of you come together as an artist. Like all the different assets of you come together because, you know, all the things that you're involved with and all the things that you're capable of doing kind of are spearheaded by your artistry, which then require all of those other things to support it. And I'll mention something that's come to mind as well, that one of the music videos you did with The Escape, where you built the set.
The Lost Boys video.
The Lost Boys video. And you destroyed the set. And, you know, and then obviously, again, by the time you've done that, you know, let's go from written a song, recorded a song, mixed, mastered a song, thought of a music video, created the set, shot the video, destroyed the set, edited the video, release the video, promote the video, asset the video, you know, and you again, through all of those steps, you are very much involved, but also leading, you know what I mean? And a lot of you comes together around that. And I'm just wondering, you know, is that how you found your artistry, or is that, talk to me about your artistry and how that kind of interacts with the rest of you.
I guess the name I have is a really good synopsis of why I do everything. And my journey. The Escape is my artist name, and when I came up with that name, I was like, why do I do this? Why do I do anything creative, really? And that kind of goes back to me as a kid. I had a thing called separation anxiety disorder as a kid, and I was always in and out of mental health institutions as a kid, which made me feel weird. Like, I'm not going to butter it up. I've always felt like a weirdo, an outsider, somebody who doesn't really fit in, despite having a lot of friends and always being very sociable and stuff.
Yeah, very much so.
I've always felt like I've always felt like I have a weird brain. I have a strange brain. Like, it doesn't, I guess nowadays you'd call it neurodiverse or neurospicy is the one I like at the moment. I'm neurospicy, man.
Neuroexotic.
Yeah, I am neuro special. I'm just a bit different. But I also have this very good ability to be a chameleon. I can sort of blend in anywhere. I can fit with any kind of crowd, which isn't necessarily always a good thing. Sometimes I can get lost in that. But as a kid, The Escape was originally kind of art. I used to draw a lot. I used to paint a lot. I used to build things like little models and stuff like that. Because I was very reclusive as a child. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't go out and see a lot of people. Obviously, we knew each other from church, and that was really my kind of basis of friends, was the people I'd grown up with in church, or at school. But a lot of those people went to our church, so it was also when you look at it, it's like actually a lot of the people we went to church with also went to our school, really, I suppose, and all lived around this area, and it's sort of. It was a very interesting time to grow up like that, and actually my faith was a big part of that. And that time, and that was my release. That was how I got through life, was painting things, drawing things, writing. Like, I loved writing stories. Being in another world, I guess, is a good way to put it. I didn't like the world I was in. It was a chaotic, sometimes very difficult, depressing world for a kid to be in, and I didn't know who I was. I was different to all the other kids. I was off school a lot, in hospital a lot, because I had a lot of medical issues as a kid as well, aside from mental health issues, and all of that kind of led to me being like, where can I be that's not in this mess, I guess, of like what I didn't ask to be this person, I just am this person. So like I found these little escapes, these little releases, and originally that was painting and that was doing stuff, and then I found the drums, which is like, I watched you at church playing drums, my dad at church playing drums, and it was like,
shout out John Pearson, by the way, but the original man like John, original.
He was Keith Packer.
Yes.
Like, so there was Keith Packer.
Simon's dad, yeah.
My dad, you. There was your dad who was playing bass every week at church.
Yeah. Shout out Matt,
and
M1.
Mick Woo. And that was really kind of my introduction to being creative. Was how do I get out of my head? How do I get out of this world that's very difficult? I've always found life very difficult, normal life.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then when I got to sort of an older age, I decided I fell in love with music. I love playing in bands, and I was originally just a drummer. I find this a lot, and obviously similar case with you. Like, I find a lot of drummers end up becoming producers because you're in this world of rhythm, but you also have to sort of connect with the pianist and the bassist and the singer, and you have to learn these nuances of how.
Yeah.
Because everyone hates the drummer. Let's be entirely honest.
I mean, no one's particularly keen about
when you're in a rehearsal, the drummer has to be silent, and everyone else can noodle the whole way through.
Yeah.
You hit one time on that snare, everyone's like, "Shut up! Stop it! It's too loud."
Put it back.
But you end up just sort of learning things and getting into understanding the nuances of everybody else's craft, because drums is timing. There's not a lot of understanding you don't have to learn tone. You don't have to learn the key.
No.
I don't have to learn the scale. I just have to keep you lot in time. That is pretty much my job.
I would also say that as the drummer, by the time you are playing with a group of people, you are kind of like the foundation of the song. Mm-hmm. And I'm not to take away anyone else's part, but obviously if drums are needed in the song, they often are the driving element.
Yes.
So to then be able to take that skill and put it in the role of a producer, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know? And also, I will say this as well, as a drummer, technically, you're playing 4 instruments at once.
Yeah, you've got
because
all limbs
of your
going.
limbs.
Yeah, you've got all limbs going.
So
yeah.
your understanding of polyrhythms and also how things blend in terms of loudness with each other immediately are just installed in you because it's part of playing the drums.
Completely. And I think as well, being a drummer, you get exposed to a lot of different genres and a lot of different things. And that I just fell in love with it, and that became my new escape. It was like, I love producing music. I love making music. And that was born out of the drums. That was one of those things that I just loved being in music.
Definitely. I mean, can I ask just like a bit of a tangent, but obviously you mentioned your dad's a drummer. Mm-hmm. Was there anything about that relationship that led you into wanting to drum as well? Do you see what I mean? Is that how you kind of got into it? Was it because dad was doing it and... Do you know what I mean? Followed in his footsteps kind of thing?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this might be the case for you as well, but seeing my dad up the front of church every week, and both our dads were very involved in church as well, not just in a musical capacity either, but like seeing them up the front, especially in a musical context, seeing my dad sung. My dad played the drums as well. Sometimes he would sing and play the drums simultaneously.
Yeah.
Likewise with your dad, he would play bass and sing. Still does to this day.
And he's triggering the pedal for this and the thing.
Setting drums off, doing this, doing that, running to the back, doing the mix. It's and I think that's partly why I am who I am as well, because my dad was always he always used to describe himself as a jack of all trades, a master of none. And actually I would rephrase that for him and myself, where it's like jack of all trades, master of some. Like, you're very good at some things, but seeing my dad up there was definitely one of those things that made me think, that's cool. Like, I could do that. I want to try that. And then you give it a go, and as anything, I'm sure, like you have kids now. I'm sure there's points where you'll be like, I want them to start this, but also I would be so gassed if they got better than me at it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to lead them to a place with it, but they should surpass me for sure.
And no offense, Dad, but I am better than you. So,
I mean, as it
should be that way.
Should be. You know what I mean? Rightfully so. Do you know what I mean?
At some things. And actually that's another thing, is I don't have kids yet. I don't have a wife, so like by my age my dad had 3 kids and a wife and a house, and all these other things to look after and do. So I'm in a very fortunate position, I guess, that I can do, or just a different position. I'm in a different position where I'm able to focus fully on my craft and my creativity and my output.
Let's just talk about that for a second, because obviously one of the things you've just expressed is, you know, your dad having a family and doing music. Obviously it wasn't your dad's job.
No.
Now for you, you know, you've kind of had the sort of experience of doing it as a hobby, and then you've chosen to, you know, make it your career. How do you balance the hobby and the career aspect, and how do you keep yourself happy about the pursuit of an income whilst simultaneously trying to enjoy something that, again, you've referred to as an escape?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't think I have mastered that yet. I don't think I have. One part I struggled with for a long time was when I was working full time, doing music in studios, learning internships, whatever that was at the time. It became very difficult to disassociate from that being a job, and to pour my sort of creative side into like my evenings or whatever. Especially when I was 21, like to say 25, I also just wanted to go out and party and have fun.
I mean, yeah, rightfully so.
Do
Young
my
man.
thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's been 2 months and I haven't really made a fresh track yet, or I haven't done anything. Like, I've been working and I've been doing that in sessions. We've had this discussion before where like creativity isn't a bottomless pit. Like,
absolutely not.
You have a session and somebody's like, make another beat, make another beat, make another beat, make another beat. You get 5 beats in and you're like,
yeah,
I'm kind of running out of like juice here. Like, it's not that I couldn't make you another one. I can make you another one. That's fine. But is it going to be my best work? Probably not. Is it going to be something that I'm going to really love at the end of it and you're going to love? Probably not.
No. I would argue that's the point where it starts to feel like work.
Yes.
And that kind of feels like the enemy of creativity a little bit, when it's now laborious as opposed to, you know, flow, if you like. Like, I'm just here. This is coming out of my presence and my involvement, enjoyment and knowledge all streaming at one time, versus right, we better, you know, make this right. And not just right, but for a client now who may not have the same opinion about what you're doing as you do.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's another.
Let's just pause for the
sirens.
They found us.
Oh my goodness.
They found us. We'll be back after this
short break. Yes, officer. Yeah, I mean, when you're working with artists, I think it becomes a very different game. As a producer, it becomes a very different game because this was something that I learned from Hannah V. Was when you're a producer,
shout out Hannah,
big up Hannah. Her advice was, you as a producer, you are not a musician, you're not the mix engineer, you're not any of those things. Obviously they're part of your job, but that's not what you're there for. You are there as a director of that person's vision. Think of yourself as you're in a theater and there's a director. If that play is about love and at some point the person starts going off on some tangent in an angry way that has nothing to do with love, or they start being silly and actually it's a really serious play, your job as a director is to pull them back into that focus, because that's what's going to captivate the audience, that's what's going to captivate the crowd and make that the best possible thing it can be. And sometimes there might be a tangent, but that's a purposeful tangent. As a producer, that's your job. You are a director of that person's vision. And actually, if they are making a love song and they start being silly in the middle of it, or they get really angry at one point and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, you're trying to say you love somebody and you've gritted your teeth as you're singing it, or whatever it is, it's bringing that back to sort of be like, okay, cool, like, great, but how do we shift that back across into the sphere that you're trying to be? And I think that's what the best producers do. A lot of the guys that I know and the girls that I know that are really doing their thing, they have this innate ability to understand your vision, to embody your vision as well, so that every time the artist moves out of that vision, you're able to say, come back into, like, I know where you've gone, but come back, like, this is the sphere we're in today. And as an artist myself, I like, you do tangent, you get a new idea, you're like, oh, let's try that, oh, let's do this, oh, let's do that.
I mean, look, on that note, I want to now get your answer to
the tangent. Like,
no, I want to get your answer to being, balancing your hobby versus your need to make an income.
And this is the
I'm going to produce you now.
This is the problem.
Back to the point.
Is that I'd
like to produce you back to the point.
I am just like all over the place. But yes, I found that I had to separate the two things in my own head. So I am an artist, but I am also, which is my hobby. So the escape is my hobby, like as the forward facing thing that other people are going to see, the music they're going to listen to that's dropped by the escape. That is my hobby. That's where I can spend 6 months tweaking a bass line. Do you know what I mean? If I really want to. I never have like that. If I really want to.
5.5 months is close to.
Yeah, 5 months. It was 5 months and 3 weeks. Okay, and 4 days.
It's real close, brother. It's real close.
But yeah, it's that thing. I mean, you've seen some of the tracks. Some of the tracks that I'll release this year, I've made 3 years ago.
Yeah, lots of re-edits,
lots of revamps. I mean, I've got a mate. I won't name and shame him on this thing, but you know him, and he will make a song, and you come back the next time and it's a completely different song. Like, what you heard doesn't exist anymore. It is gone. Dope. It's the new thing's dope, but you're like, what happened to the thing we made last time? And he's like, oh no, I had another idea, and he goes with it.
Shout out Soursick.
You know it.
Like, I had to shout him out because you're a dope producer and he knows it. So
beyond dope.
Yeah,
beyond dope. Yeah. If you're watching this, hit up Soursick for your music.
Super talented.
But I mean, I've tangented again.
Just your saying. The balance. You're obviously, like you said, the escape is essentially your hobby. But you engage with music in a lot more capacity than that, and how do you preserve your hobby when you are professionally working in the industry as well? How do you keep a love for it?
That's a roller coaster of a ride, for real. Like, sometimes I don't love music. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do a day in the studio and I'm like, I get to the end of it and I think, I want to lock this door. Like, I'm leaving. Like, cool, great.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Don't play me another song.
Don't play me another thing. Nobody talk to me. Nobody ask me a question. And then it's 1 a.m. in the morning and an artist messages you and is like, I've just listened to the mix and I want to tweak this. And you're like,
tomorrow.
Yeah. There's some days I don't love it. And that's being 100% real is this, if you decide to do this as a career, there's going to be times that you really resent this. And I often describe it as a blessing and a curse, being a creative in any kind of field. I think that's the case in creativity. Because there are hard times. There are times when things get difficult and it's hard to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing. Of course, or that this is worth it sometimes. Yeah. On the flip, there's times that really surprise you and you think, this is going to be a drag. And then actually it becomes one of the best sessions you've ever had.
Yeah. Or opportunities.
And even on a much sort of weirder note, I've done sessions here, for example, at Star City Studios. I've done some sessions where somebody comes in, they start the session by saying, I can't sing. I have no intention of being an artist in any way, shape or form, but this is a song my dad loves and I want to sing it for him, record it and give it to my dad. And actually that's when music becomes a whole nother thing for me as a job, because it's like, oh wow, okay, like I'm here to support you through this process. because
Yeah.
that's where my expertise are. If I go to a lawyer, I need the lawyer to know law. It's not up to me to know law.
100%.
Like
Mechanic, barber.
mechanic. So when I get there, you start chatting to me, and I go, "Oh, okay, wow." And in my head, I'm thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. But
just
like,
don't rip me off. But
sick, dope. That sounds really interesting. And actually, you've made this process super easy for me. And actually, as a career, that's what I've really learned is my job is to make this frictionless for the artist, for the client, whoever that is. I am supposed to make this as easy and simple as possible, so that when they leave, they have the same feeling as I have when I'm doing it as a hobby.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because I suppose at that point, they're kind of engaging with it like a hobby, sort of, or like an experience that they, aim to get some fun out of. And I suppose there's a certain point to it where what you're doing is facilitating the smooth, recording or writing or whatever in that session to enable them to have had that experience. And that, as you've said, is really rewarding. You mentioned, rightfully so, I think, that there are times where you might hate it. How do you kind of combat that? Like you've been involved for years, like myself, man. You're not new to this game. How do you work with the bad days? How do you fight the things when things aren't going necessarily the way you want them to? How do you stay involved, basically, and how have you stayed involved? Because you've had a lot of success, but like you said, it's not always sunshine and roses. No. So on some of the more difficult seasons, how have you...
I reasoned this with myself really early when I was having hard days, when I was doing internships, and you're doing the crap. Do you know what I mean?
You're putting the hours, bro.
You're doing the work, and also they give you the dregs. They give you all the rubbish work. So it's like, edit this vocal for 6 hours. Like, I just want you to melodyne all day, and you're just like, if you've never done melodyne, it just sounds like whale noises, dolphin noises all day long. That's all you're doing. You're just moving a note, and it just goes.
I've been a melodyne engineer, right? It's just...
But the thing I told myself in my head was, my worst day in a studio is better than my best day in some other job I hate. And actually, I can't complain. I can't complain when I get to do something I love. Like, even if it wasn't a great day, I can't complain. Like, it's... When you're doing something, and when you're a creative, and actually your job is to be creative, some days you leave and you think, I've just done the sickest thing today. I've just spent all day making sounds, arranging sounds into a way that when me and the person listen back to, the client listen back to it, or on my own, when I listen back to it on my own, I'm like, yeah, that makes my body feel a way. That makes my head feel something. That makes me...
Yeah, I get that.
Music's a visceral experience, man.
Oh, totally. I mean, you're like an alchemist, essentially. You're creating something from nothing. Something that didn't exist prior to you getting here and thinking this and being exactly where you were at that point in time.
Completely.
Based on all the influences that you've had, of course, and whatever, but it didn't exist prior to you.
And I've done a lot
doing that.
A lot of... Can I swear?
Do what you want, man.
I've done a lot of shit jobs, man. Like, I've done a lot of shit jobs. I've worked on building sites. I've worked in offices.
I mean, they're not necessarily
for me
bad jobs,
no,
but
sorry.
Yeah, for your personality.
Sorry. I've done a lot of shit jobs for me, as in I've not liked them. I've really left at the end of the day and thought, that sucks. I haven't really contributed much to society. I haven't contributed much to my own life. I've taken home like £40 today. And I've grafted, and I don't love this. I don't enjoy this. Yeah. But then I've been on building sites, and I see some of those guys love what they do, and I'm like, sick. You do that. This ain't for me. I've worked in offices. People love what they do. I leave every day thinking, what am I doing? Like, why am I working this job? And that's what I mean by my worst day in the studio is still better than my best day doing something I hate.
I hear that.
So despite that not sort of making things better when you have a bad day, it's a reasoning that you can have with yourself to say, do you know what, things could be worse. You could be doing a job that you don't like just to pay the bills. You could be doing a job that you don't like because you've just got to feed the family and put food on the table. You've got to do X, Y, Z.
True.
And actually, I get to do that doing something that most of the time I really enjoy. Like,
yeah. I mean, look, we've both been in, you know, we've had to come up in this industry, man, and so we've both had moments in our career where we've had to make income from other things, you know, and had to put in that grind, and even that is like a level of love for what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I love what I'm doing so much that I'm prepared to support myself and it, and the continuation of it, the pursuit of it, through finding work in other places.
And I would never, and I don't want to, when I say I've done shit jobs, they're shit to me. Like, I don't enjoy them. But I would always tell people, do that job if it facilitates you doing music. Like, if you've got to work in a kitchen for 40 hours a week so that in the evenings when you finish that job, you can go to a studio and make some music, or you can go home and just afford that new plugin, or you can go and afford to go on to Morocco and do that writing camp in the summer. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever facilitates you doing music until music facilitates that.
You do music.
Do it. Because if you love this that much, and that's why I was working on building sites. That's why I was working in offices. That's why I was doing all of that, because I knew I needed to fund my life, so that I could have the freedom to do my music. Until music became a thing that it was like, okay, cool. And again, we've had this discussion before. That's peaks and troughs as well. Sometimes this game goes quiet for a year. Sometimes this game goes quiet for a few years. Like,
I mean, I think one of the common misconceptions about the music industry is the red carpet, you know, just that frame of it, that it is always so glamorous and always so Insta, you know, it's really, really not. Don't get me wrong. There are, like you said, definite peaks. Like, there are moments where you're like, my gosh, this is just everything I dreamed it would be. But then the reality is that tomorrow, and for the most part, there's always tomorrow, things are going to go back to more of a leveled out experience, and maybe even a low experience if it's that much of a high. And
the drop is real.
The drop is real.
I used to have it after gigging. When I used to do the escape gigs, I would always plan, and I only learnt this after like a year of doing gigs solid, was I had to book out the next day to have nothing on, because the drop was so far.
Gosh, yeah.
Like, being on stage and having the adrenaline rush and the high, and especially when it's a really good gig and people start singing the songs back to you and you end up being like, whoa, like you have this connection with the audience.
Yeah.
And I know people will be like, wow, you had a connection. It's like, genuinely, you leave
it's
thinking
energy, man.
that was a real, me and the people in that room and the band and whoever was in this building tonight experience something that will never happen again. Like, I might play this exact same set, but not in this building with that crowd.
That moment.
Like, that moment was that moment. And if you've ever been to a gig where you've really left thinking, whoa, that was because you were in that place at that time with that set of people and that band or that DJ or whatever that was.
And if I can add on to that, it was probably because I wasn't filming something in that moment as well, fully present.
I've actually done that in the last sort of 5 years. I've refused to like film things unless it's like one of the moments where you're like, I have to get a shot of this, but like,
there's memories that
I
you
used to get there and I'd be like, film this, film that, because I want to put something on Instagram later and show that I've been at this gig or show people how cool this was. And actually you end up thinking, oh wait, I missed my favorite song because I was watching it through a screen. Like, and actually I can't really remember what happened there.
The memory is no longer as potent.
And then you watch the video back and you think, oh, that doesn't even do it justice.
No,
like,
not at all.
Especially when you're in a place like, I used to love like underground bass, deep house, all stuff like that. Your phone will never give you
proper scene.
When a sub drop hits and the kick lands and it hits you in the chest and you actually feel your chest pulse. That's like a thing.
That's
like,
a real thing.
You can feel that, and actually you're like, Oh my
And
days.
I suppose actually that's interesting, because I suppose that's what you're sort of describing as the high of the show that you do.
Yeah.
In terms of the band stuff and the live stuff, I suppose that's the high that you experience, which is then giving you this ability to then come massively down the next day.
Yeah, and even I this was something else I used to find really strange, is I used to lose an hour after I came off the stage. So I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody about this, but like when I would come off stage, I was so high, so elated from the experience of being on stage and performing. And you come off and everybody's like, oh, damn, that was amazing. Oh, guys, that was amazing. The escape. Oh, my goodness, whatever. Because if they enjoyed it. But I don't remember any of that. So, like, there would be a lot of people who afterwards be like, oh, I saw you after the show the other night. It was amazing. And I'd be like, I have no recollection of that.
Didn't know you were there.
I didn't even know you were there. Like, and
thank you for your
And I may have been
contributions.
present and actually just like had a whole conversation with you when I came off stage. But will I remember that? No. Like one of the biggest gigs I done, O2 Islington, we performed to like I think it was 600 people in the end at that gig, and it was heaving. The energy was amazing. The show went flawless. Like there was no problem. It was one of them moments you just come off and you're like, this is why I do it. Like
Right
this
place,
is why I do
right
it.
time, all me. Yeah.
The next time I actually remember anything is about an hour and a half later when I was sat in a pub, and all of a sudden I just sort of came around. I was like, this is really weird. Why am I in a pub? Wait, what? Like, as far as my head was concerned, I was still on stage until that moment. Like, I was still in this high of this element of, this is amazing. So then, anyway, so the next day, I would always, because you're so high, the next day, I was depleted. I would wake up next day, think, what am I doing in my life? Like, how am I gonna?
It's a lot of
like,
energy, though. I mean, let's be fair to you, because you have expended a lot of energy to produce a great show.
Completely.
Whether it went great or not, you are still trying to achieve a great show, and you have put the same amount of energy in regardless, right? And that has to be considered. It's like running a marathon to some extent.
Yeah.
That the next day your body's gonna be mash up, bruv.
Oh,
Do you see what I'm saying?
Mentally and physically.
Yeah. So after a show, I totally empathise with the whole. Actually, I feel just low because of how switched, and even what you're describing in terms of the hour afterwards, it's like your mind is in hyperdrive. You know, the highs and lows of this industry are a real thing. And actually, if you get too caught up with the highs, you will kind of be very disappointed, essentially, because it's just not that. And it really is about, it's not to, and I wouldn't say it's not like every other day that's not a high is a low, but it is to say that you have to manage your expectations in terms of a career in this industry, because obviously our personal ideas of success are one thing. What the world tells us success looks like is another thing.
That's a major point. Like, defining success for yourself in this industry, I think, is one of the most crucial things to a longevity in this career.
100%.
I mean, me and you have done lots of different things in this game. We've been to what a lot of people would consider some of the peaks, some of the best things you could do, and like some of them are really boring. Like, even takes like award shows, for example. They last forever. They
really
go
long.
on for hours and hours. Really, they're the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's nice to go somewhere, get suited and booted, and dress up, talk to like-minded people, people in the industry, have a free meal maybe, have some free booze. It's great. But actually, in comparison to some of the other highs I've had in this industry, like, pales in comparison to those. Like,
definitely.
And sometimes the most random day will end up being a high. Do you know what I mean in that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of the things that I've always considered my involvement with music, if we look from the ground up, you know, like you said, a drummer and just music production, is that actually I have found it, for me personally works as kind of like a therapy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so on days perhaps where life isn't necessarily going according to plan or feeling great, my ability to engage with music in a creative way has really sometimes provided me with such a valuable mental stability through unstable times. Do you know what I mean? And I feel I've always felt it's like a bit of a, you know, if we consider, certainly as I was raised, music's a gift, right? You got this gift, and it's kind of like the initial perspective is that the gift was for me to actually provide me with a means of self therapy, if that likes, and then secondary to that, it's then a gift that serves other people through my ability, my skill set, and you know, the actual sounds that we're capable of putting together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's probably the key to all of this. Like why I'm called The Escape, for example, is this. It's not so that I can get out of this world and be dissociated from who I am and the life I live. It's because when I'm there, I get something out of that. I get... especially as somebody who is neurospicy, who is neuroexotic, like that is something for me that I could be in therapy 24/7, to be entirely honest with you. With the brain that I have, I'm like a therapist's dream. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, let's unbox
Welcome.
They're like, oh, Pandora's box. Oh my goodness, let's open it up and see what's inside. And it's like, you don't want to be in my head as much as I don't want to be in my head sometimes. And also, I think one thing I learned throughout my therapy that I have done is that, like, one of the worst things for me is ruminating, thinking on the same thing over and over and over again. And sometimes that can just be people asking me if I'm all right too much. If I'm struggling with something, are you okay? Are you okay? And then me feeling like I have to answer that question. And when in actual fact, going into the music world, going into Logic and disappearing for 2-3 hours can do me so much more good than talking about my problems. Sometimes talking about my problems is the worst thing I can do.
But do you know what's so fascinating about what you've just described is that, you know, the sense of remunerating, doing something like repeating something over and over is exactly what you do by the time you sit in Logic.
Yeah. Do
you know what I mean? Your ability to, like you said, sometimes I could work on a bass line for 6 months is like, not everyone can have a song on loop for hour upon hour upon hour. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's almost like, what, you know, you're putting this thing to good use.
Yeah, healthy ruminating, I guess.
Well, I mean,
ruminating, you know, on the right things.
Yeah, almost like, because again, for you to focus on production requires that energy that you would otherwise be spending somewhere else.
And with my brain, it's something that if I don't push that in a way, if you are someone in general, if you are someone who has a tendency to feel like that, like your brain runs away with itself, I implore you to find something that you love that you can put that much energy into, whether it's a hobby, whether it might be walking. It might just be you love going out to the South Downs on a weekend. Get a train. It is that easy. Get a train down to the South Downs and walk across the fields, or look out at the sea, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be music. It doesn't have to be this creative output. You might not be a creative person, but if that's where you are at, like, find something that you can just pour yourself into and be immersed in. Because the worst thing I've ever done is like secluded myself, brought myself away from music for a while, not spoken to my friends, not spoken to people about how I feel, and not got that down in some kind of way. And actually, every time I do withdraw myself from that, that's when my life seems to spiral out of control a little bit, or I and not necessarily physically, like in a real sense, but actually in my head, it feels like I lose control of things. And actually just staying busy, and that's why I say staying busy is something for me that's something that I love being busy.
Right, let me drop in though there, because I want to talk to you about busyness versus productivity. Because it's very easy to be busy without being productive. How are you balancing that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no, completely. And sometimes I don't balance that. Sometimes I find myself, I've spent 4 days just toying around with something, and I've gone back and forth with things, and then I look and I go, bruv, what are you doing? Like, what have you actually spent the last 4 days doing? Which isn't always a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? When you've given yourself, sometimes you need that for a break. Do you know what I mean? You need to have some time off, and you need to reset. But then actually, when you're trying to be productive, this is when the whole discipline versus motivation thing comes in. And that's a constant battle with everybody will have with themselves. But motivation is a fleeting thing.
It's cheap, man.
So cheap. So one day you wake up and you are so motivated.
It helps.
Oh, it helps. Don't get me
wrong. It might
wrong.
be the first 5% to get you out of the room, but it's not going to sustain you.
But some days you're going to wake up and it's not there.
Yeah.
It's left the room.
Most days.
It's gone on holiday. Do you know what I mean? It's gone. Like, you're like, where is my motivation today? Where has it gone? And that's when you have to be disciplined in the regard of, right, cool, I'm going to structure time to do this. I'm going to structure time to learn. I'm going to structure time to take time away from this as well. Go and see my boys. Go and just have, because that's something musicians can do a lot. Life. You neglect life.
I was going to ask you, because I wanted to ask you about that. This is one of the things I think comes up with a lot of creatives who also work within their kind of, take your hobby, the escape, you also work in it. How do you escape all of that? Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise everything I do is music, and that's all I live and I breathe. And we talk about things like creative burnout and writer's block, all of those types of things. So how do you escape that? What you said things like escape to the country, talk to my boys. Is that what you're describing? Is that the solution to working and hobbying and it's all identity over here? How do you balance Tim with your career and the escape that seems to take up a lot of Tim's life?
That's a great question.
I mean, we're here now, and I know later you're going to go check one of our boys, and we're going and that's all.
I think that's really it. I'm, and this won't be the case for everybody. Obviously, this is just, I can only speak from my experience here and my lived experience. But for me, I'm extremely grateful for the friends I have around me, and don't get me wrong, my escape from the escape hasn't always been a fruitful escape. Like when I was younger, that would have just been going out and getting absolutely wrecked, like just going and partying like 4 nights a week and being like, yeah, that was so much fun, man. And then you're sat on your own on a Sunday and you're like, I feel horrible, like my body hurts, my head hurts, everything hurts, like and I found more like better ways to do that. One thing for me is I have a great circle of friends around me, and I love just spending time with them, sometimes doing nothing. I can't remember the term, but it was a term, I saw it on a podcast recently, but it's something people in Trinidad and Tobago say, where they basically talk about, like, do you want to come over and do nothing with me tonight? Like, let's do nothing together tonight. Like, let's sit in each other's presence, and we don't even need to talk. Like, let's watch a film, and we'll just watch the film, and at the end of the night I'll say toodaloo, catch you later, and let's spend time doing nothing. I love spending time with my people. I love I like, this is the other thing as well, as chaotic as my brain can be in a sort of with my I have depression, I've had mental health issues my whole life. With that, I'm also somebody that people often reference as like completely unserious. I'm always making a joke, like in a good way sometimes, not in a good way sometimes. I'm always smiling.
That's what I'm saying. You're
so
a really happy person to me.
Yeah.
And I know that's obviously, we can talk about Robin Williams, happiest guy in the world.
And this is the thing I think is it can be difficult sometimes when you come across when your exterior comes across as like, hey, I'm Tim. I had a thing for a long time, and still sometimes, where I enter a room and I'm very aware all of the people in that room want high energy Tim, and they might not. Do you know what I mean? But I get the vibe.
The expectation from you feels like
I've got to put on a show. I've got to be Tim. I've got to smile. I've got to crack jokes. I've got to, this has got to be high energy, because I've always been very hyperactive as well. So it's one of those things that people sort of look at me like, what's wrong? If I just sit in the corner and I don't do nothing, people are like, well, what's going on with Tim?
I often get that. If I'm quiet, people are like, are you all right?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just
and then going back to that thing of people keep asking me, are you all right? And then then eventually I'm like, I don't know. Am I all right?
Am I all right?
Maybe I'm not all right. And actually,
caught yourself in the mirror at the wrong time. Am I all right? Yeah.
And sometimes it's fine to not
be all right.
Not be all right. Sometimes it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And I know that's like that cliche thing, but it's true.
But it's true. Yeah.
I think sometimes I put the onus on myself to sort of fix myself when I feel down some days, and actually I've learned that some days you just got to feel it. Do you know what I mean? Some days, give yourself 24 hours, and that's a good piece of advice I learned from somebody, and I'll give out to anybody, is when you wake up and you feel like the whole world's against you that day, you quite frankly could sit on the top of a hill and watch the world burn. Cool. Let that day be that day. 24 hours. You give yourself a ticking clock of 24 hours. When you wake up that next day, done. Don't entertain that thought anymore, because otherwise you'll spiral and it'll be 7 weeks later and you'll be in the pits of depression. And I've been there. I've done that. And I think that's helped me a lot. But that kind of need to show up and be this big kind of energy in a room, one sometimes helps me and sometimes defeats me.
I mean, the thing is that obviously in this industry, to some extent, you have to show up.
Yeah.
Right. And particularly when it's so competitive, the network's big, we sometimes need to make an impression, and therefore it can require that of you. But again, it's draining, and it can also, there's also a downside to having to feel like you have to expend that kind of energy, because for me, it slyly led to me wanting everyone to like me. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that wasn't my intention initially, but that's what it led to. And it took me quite a while to kind of get out of, not everyone is, even if, I do my best to be polite, nice and kind to people that I meet. Certainly if I've never met you before, that's going to be my starting position. But inevitably you can't please everyone, and not everyone will like you. And I think when I kind of started to let go of that a little bit, that changed, but it is draining. Do you know what I mean? I know one of the things, just to sidestep a little bit, I know one of the things that you've certainly been doing for maybe the last couple of years is going to the gym as well. Yeah. How's that impacted you?
That's something that and this is just personally for me, was one of the biggest game changers of my mental health kind of journey, was being like, I think more so than the actual being physical and active, it was the routine, it was the structure. Yeah. It was saying, right, every day, especially in this industry, there isn't a lot of structure. Some days you're working from 10 till 6. Other days you're working from 6 p.m. until 2 o'clock in the morning. And you've got, and if you wake up I'm one of those people as well, kind of at a certain point in the morning, I will just wake up, and I'm up anyway. Yeah. So
absolutely.
If I wake up at 9 a.m. and have a lie in, I know I'm not starting work until 6. Whereas most people will finish work at 6 and they're going home and they're just going to sit on the sofa for the rest of the day.
Yeah, there's a huge lack of structure. One of the things I did very early was to throw out weekends. I was like, I'm just not working weekends, because otherwise I lose my entire week to scatty work. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And I know I'm terrible for that. I'll take sessions whenever.
I mean, it's part of the. We appreciate
whenever.
it is part of the hustle, and I've had to, but I did try to shut it down.
But
overall.
and that's something I could be a lot better with. I think is having structure to my life of being like I work these times, and obviously the odd occasion when something good pops up.
I mean, you won't not go to a pop-in session on a Sunday because I just don't do Sundays. But yeah,
there's also been times where I could really have done with the Saturday off. Do you know what I mean? To go and just chill with my boys, do nothing.
Yeah.
Play some GTA.
Yeah.
Like,
just chill.
Do you know what I mean?
Just chill.
Like,
what you're saying though is that the gym has kind of filled in that structure for you
in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Whereas before I might have gone right every Friday night I'm going out and getting on it. Like that was my structure. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
I mean there's structure to that.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Because it came the thing you look forward to. Whereas actually like I got to a point where the gym for me was that it was something I looked forward to every day. I knew I was getting up and all I had to do was get there. That was that's something else. I'll give you a bit of game on the gym front. Just get there. The rest is history after you get there.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's
because you get there, you walk in, you go, I'm not feeling it today. And then you think, I'm here already, so I may as well try that. And then you go, well, if I'm going to try it, I may as well load it up a little bit.
That's what I'm saying.
And now you're
commit
doing
to 10 minutes, yeah.
Proper,
after 10 minutes, you're like, right, I'm warm now. We might as well get it going.
May as well. I travelled all this way. I may as well crack on and get something.
I
get
might
it in.
as well do something.
Next thing you know, I'm leaving the gym 2 hours later, completely wrecked. And I'm like, yeah. But this is the other thing is I thought when I started that I was gonna leave feeling tired and lethargic, and actually what I found was that going to the gym energized me. It completely set me up for my day.
Definitely.
And it didn't matter how hard I went. I was achy for the rest of the day, maybe.
Yeah, which still feels good after a certain sore feels good. Do you know what I mean? Muscles are alive. That's good to know.
Yeah, which again is a weird feeling when you actually hurt, but you're like, this is good.
But I feel
great about it.
Sick. Yeah.
But yeah, the structure of going to the gym became something, and that might not be the gym for everyone. Like,
no, I appreciate that. It's not for everyone.
Find something that is your structure. It might be going out for a walk in the local park every morning with a cup of coffee and seeing the ducks, throwing some duck food down for them. Do you know what I mean? It might be that.
Yeah.
It might, and
find something.
I guess the thing I would say is find your non-negotiables. Like, I had no non-negotiables for a very long time. It was like I'd miss family events, I'd miss friends' parties. I didn't go on holiday for about 5 years. I never had a break. Like, life just became solely focused on my creative endeavors, and actually I've found that I've become more fruitful in my creative endeavors when I structure my life a little better, when I have some non-negotiables.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things I found, particularly in avoiding things like creative burnout, is just that, is almost like to set up my breaks before I hit my breaks. Do you know what I mean? Which it might be over the course of a year as opposed to the course of a week, which is a slightly larger form of structure, but it is definitely something I found. Like, you know, I try, and a break is totally, I suppose, if I'm talking to someone else, is totally your idea of whatever chills you out for a moment. But I try to do it quarterly. Nothing, and again, a break could be a single night away. I'm not even stressing how long that break has to be, but to actively break, to actively stop your mind going into all of the things that you are responsible for just a moment, is so refreshing in this in this industry.
I mean, as you know, I've had quite a hectic year, in all forms, good and bad, highs and lows. And actually, the last few months, I've kind of, other than professionally, but personally, I've taken time off music. I haven't made any music at all. Other than in a professional setting, in a studio. Obviously, that's my job. But outside of that, I've sort of had, as the escape, I've had to escape the escape in the last few months, and I've just got back into it in the last month or so. But that kind of started with when I went to LA. Like, I went to LA and I was just sort of like, I need to reset. I need to understand who I am again. I need to sort of, because you change, you grow, you get older.
Absolutely.
And the music I was writing when I was partying every night as a 21-year-old, served a very different purpose to what music is now, when I might not see my friends for 3-4 weeks at a time because we're all living life. And actually, what I want to say in my music is different now. What I want to be as an artist is different to what it was 10 years ago.
And I suppose that's forever, not forever, but it's just like you. It's changing and growing and evolving. And what you have to say, you may have more thoughts on or a different opinion on tomorrow.
And allowing yourself that time to be like, yeah, no, I am a different person. Like, that's fine. That's the whole point of life, is to grow and become a better person, and to become a different person as your life grows on. Not to the point that you're a completely different individual. Maybe that is the case if your life isn't the best as well. If you're not living right, sometimes you need a complete flip.
Yeah.
But I think it's just being honest with yourself, giving yourself the time to have a break. Like, for me personally, going away on my own is the worst thing I can possibly do, because of my mind is the way my mind is. Sitting on my own, I've done it a few times, going away places and renting an Airbnb for a weekend, and I just sit on my ones for like 3 days, and I just, like, by the end of it, I've almost gone mental. Like, find myself just wandering around the local castle some days, just like, I just do this, I guess, today. And it's like, for me, that I realized that was, it's just not what gets me going. That's not for me.
I'm actually the total opposite.
And I was going to say, whereas
I love it.
I'm off to the beach for a few
I'm like,
days.
listen, just leave me alone.
Everyone leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Whereas I'm like, cool, where are my boys? Let's do something. Let's go out here. Let's go and do that. Like, my worst nightmare is when people are like, do you want to come and do nothing at all? And I'm like, what, as in like nothing at all? And they're like, no, just go and sit in this park and do nothing. And I'm like, what, we're not even gonna like play music? And like, I don't know. And they're just like,
I mean, someone's being very specific about doing nothing right now.
Like, and I'm like,
I mean, no one wants to go do nothing with no one in the park. That doesn't sound fun.
But some people do.
Don't get me wrong.
Like,
summer day, you don't have to make an excuse for that. Cool.
Oh, so like, for instance, sorry,
do you see what I'm saying?
Let me structure that a bit better. Like, the idea of going on a holiday and sitting on a beach all day with no plan, for me personally,
depends on who you are.
But for me personally, the idea of sitting on a sunbed all day is like hell on earth for me. I'm like, what would I be doing all day? Like, well, you're more likely to find me digging a hole on the beach.
I mean, the funny thing is, if you've ever done it, that is probably part of. I don't think anyone just sits on a side like. If anyone like just. At that point, you're dead, right? If you are capable or you're burnt, you're
Some people just love sleeping. They love sitting down. Yeah,
listen.
Maybe reading a book or something.
I suppose it depends on why you're there, innit? Like, you got an array of people on a beach. There could be various reasons as to why you're...
But I tangent. The point is...
Yeah.
You got to find what's a release for you outside of your career, outside of your hobby, because these things can become all-consuming at times. And actually, it's trying to find life, and actually, the life is what feeds back into your hobby, what feeds back into your
100%,
your music.
It's interesting because I think this is like, and I think we'll wrap it up here, but it's kind of like identity, right? Your identity can be so, like, the fact is, you and me are valuable human beings, whether we did another song, piece of music, deal or not. Bottom line, right? We're valuable human beings. And I think obviously for creatives, it's so easy for us to get our identity wrapped up in what we do, our achievements, our accolades, our success, and actually therefore devalue ourselves because we're now looking in comparison to someone else's achievements and success. And, you know, if it doesn't measure up, now I feel less valuable. And I think what you're speaking about really kind of hones in on maintaining identity outside of career, outside of hobby, because again, all of that stuff, like you said, pits and falls, and I'm not saying life isn't like that anyway, but to kind of be stable, more stable, if you like, with the career and the hobby is almost to like maintain identity with your humanity outside of...
One day you might not want to do this.
And that's fair enough.
And that's the thing I've kind of reasoned with myself about. There might be a time when I want to go and live in Switzerland in a little lodge and be a carpenter for like
let me know when you're there.
From when I'm 65 till the end of my days. That might be what I want to do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Making IKEA knockoff furniture.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I just chopping down my own tree. Like, me and my friends have spoken about this before as well. Like, that idea of there might be a time in our lives where we want to just go and buy some farmland all together and just build our houses all on a farmland, and you sort of live in a few acres of land,
studio on it.
But you've got your own house. It's far away from your mates, so you don't have to see them for 6 weeks if you don't want to. But also, if I go tearing past your house in a quad bike, just know I'm having fun. But my point is that you have to find who you actually are as a human being, because music can become all encompassing. Your job can become all encompassing to the point that one day you're sat there and it all fades away, and you don't know who you are. What makes you tick. I mean, I've done a lot of soul searching in the last sort of 6-7 years of my life. I was diagnosed with depression at the age of 25, and that sort of really changed the course of how I looked at my mental health, how I treated myself, and what I really thought was important in life. Because I realized that your own body can attack you sometimes to the point that you lose everything around you. So like for me personally, I realized that the reason currently that I feel I'm on this earth at this particular moment in time is to help as many other people as I possibly can in whatever facet that is. And this goes back to the start of what we were talking about, of why I wear so many hats and why I do what I do, is I just want to help. I just want to be as helpful to everyone around me as I possibly can be. And I've had to learn that not do that to my own detriment. But that means in a studio, how can I be as helpful as possible? If that means the person wants to come in today and just talk about their life, and they've had a really bad week, and their mum's in hospital, and actually we only do an hour of their 2-hour session of music, and that first hour was just talking, then cool, like, that's what we're going to do today. If I need to be down at the park and helping build a community bonfire,
just as long as it's doing nothing, it's not on the cards, then I'm there.
and that's the thing. And I've had to go and meet people and do the worst thing imaginable in my brain, of go and sit with somebody in silence and do nothing. And I'm stewing throughout that whole process.
What's
but
needed,
they needed that. And
and actually, when I met you, you know, not when I met you, far from when I met you, but when you sort of, you know, I suppose took up your engineering hat more, you were just helping. You were just like, right, Jay, I'm here and I'm involved and I'm happy to help with whatever. And I remember it was at least a year or so where you were just essentially assisting and then taking over and just doing, you know, and then running the show. But you would just let me get involved and a massive help. Do you know what I mean? So it says a lot in terms of, you know, your character, but also I suppose your involvement and what has brought value to you, and I suppose your career in general, is that you have been a help to many people. Do you know what I mean? I
hope so. And really all that's all I hope, is that when I look back on my last days in this world, I hopefully can look back and just think I made the sphere that I was in a little bit better than when I arrived on this earth. Something my nan used to tell me as a kid was just make sure your corner of the world is as good as it can be. And if everybody does that, the world would be a much better place. And actually, that's all you can focus on. You can try and change the world, but you might never achieve that. But one thing you can do is be as great as you possibly can be to the people around you who are actually in your life. Some people go on to do that to the millions. Other people, you might only do that to 500 people in your whole life, but that impact might have changed their lives.
Even 5 sometimes, you know. You never know. You never know.
Completely. Oh, sorry, I just keep saying numbers. I mean, yeah.
No, but
completely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And find your thing, find what makes you happy, and make that your calling. I think there's a lot of an onus to find a purpose, to find a calling in life sometimes, and it's like, just pick a thing, find what makes you really happy, I'm enthralled when I can help somebody, I feel great, they feel great, and actually the world's a little bit better than when I started it, that process. And if that for you is being somebody who can listen, if that's somebody who's very practical, if that's somebody who can make other people money, and that's your skill and that's what you're really good at, do it. Like,
get involved.
Just do what you can do, because every one of us has this special skill, superpower in this life, and it's rarely ever your actual career that falls into. Usually it's who you are as a human being that's your superpower. Yeah,
I think those are the last words, bro. Perfect.
Love you, love yourself.
Smashed
and
it.
Love Jay,
smashed it.
because this has been a therapy for me as well, so